Hi, lovelies. Welcome to Narc Free Formula. My name is Freedom, and I'm going to just do a quick episode this evening about the Chris Watts incident case, should I say? Chris and Shanann. Shanann. Oh, she's got one of those tricky names. Shanann. Chris and Shanann Watts. As you may or may not know, I mean, most people know about this case. This was at the end of last year. Chris murdered his 15-week pregnant wife and two young girls in cold blood because he wanted to start a life with his new supply. This is the classic case of narcissistic behavior. I've just been looking at some of the footage of the interview that took place with Chris. So this is after he has strangled his wife for 2 to 4 minutes until she died, after he has smothered his 4-year-old child who fought back so much that she ripped the top of her tongue off from biting. He then proceeded to smother his 3-year-old daughter to death. Then he put their bodies in the back of his truck and drove them out to his work site. He then dumped his wife's body in a shallow grave that he dug, and he dumped his little girls' bodies into 2 oil drums that were filled with crude oil. The size of the openings was 8 inches wide. In fact, on Bella, the elder of the 2 girls, he scratched her buttocks and some of her hair was ripped out as he was jamming her little body through this opening into the oil well. So this is a man who has murdered his wife and 2 children, then goes home, cleans up the house, and the next day proceeds to go to work as per usual. And it's not until the best friend of Shanann alerts police, because she knows that something's wrong, because she's trying to contact Shanann, who doesn't answer. She normally answers her phone. She normally texts her girlfriends. She has good contact with her best friend. She does none of her normal things, and so finally the girlfriend contacts the police. She rings Chris, who lies and says that she's gone on a play date. The friend says, but Chris, her car's there, and the kids' car seats are in the car, so she's obviously not gone anywhere. When they get into the house, they notice things like the EpiPen, the children's medications, things that she would not have left the house without. So from the very beginning, the scene was suspicious. So I have watched this footage of this man, and the particular footage I'm talking about, I'll put a link in the comments. But it is when he's doing this fake appeal to anyone out there, who knows about the whereabouts of his wife and children. And if you watch the footage, it's quite amazing to see. So first of all, he's just full of this kind of nervous energy, and he's swaying from side to side. He's actually laughing at times. And when the reporter asks him, did you get into an argument with them before she left? He says, no, it wasn't an argument, just an emotional conversation. I'll leave it at that. I just want them back. I just want them to come back. Please bring her back. The house isn't complete. So he's repeating himself. He's using the same little key phrases so he doesn't forget what he's supposed to say, because he would have thought this stuff out in his head. He would have thought, how does a grieving husband act? The smiling. This is another fascinating thing. So the smiling. So what's he smiling about? Well, he's smiling because He's thinking, not long now, I can be with my new supply, I can do what I wanted. It's all, it's happening, it's finally happening. I've made my move, it's all happening. It's so surreal, but it's happening. And he's also thinking, oh, these reporters are so stupid. Look at them sucking it all up. They're believing everything I'm saying. Because, he's looking at their body language and he's listening to the tone of voice that they're using, and he's reading those cues. And these are the things that are making him smile, because he's literally losing touch with reality. He's so high on his own supply right now. I mean, could you imagine the rush of fuel he got when he spent 2 to 4 minutes choking the woman he was supposed to love, or the woman who loved him, we'll put it that way. The woman who loved him, gave him children, and built a life with him, choking her to death, watching the light drain out of her eyes, seeing the confusion and doubt and fear and just utter heartbreak, seeing that in her face. He would have loved that. He would have gotten so high from that. He would have felt completely godlike and powerful, absolutely untouchable, which is why he quite literally, he's acting as though there is nothing anyone can do to touch him now. He's gotten away with it, with his, please, appealing, like I said, appealing to this kind of imaginary person who he knows full well they're not coming back. He knows where they are. Please bring her back. This house isn't complete without anyone in it. So even the things that he's saying are so disconnected. It's quite obviously performance art. I actually thought, and I might even spend some time researching this, but I almost thought that it felt like a scene from a movie. I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, but I think it's Bandits. There's a scene in a movie where a husband's appealing to the police for the return of his wife. There was something about it. The house misses you, that kind of thing. It's really interesting how he used the same kind of language, talking about the house, not being the same without them there. It's really sinister stuff, I've got to tell you. And the loading of their bodies onto the truck, the hiding of them, putting them in 3 different locations at his workplace. So he'd already picked out a place where he was going to dump their bodies. He'd already thought it all through, planned it all out. He'd done this because he'd found new supply. And obviously, as we all know, with the love bombing stage, the narcs put us up on a pedestal and they get really high from the supply that they're getting. They're loving the fact that, at the beginning, we don't know them. So they can tell us any old bullshit and we will believe it because, normal people don't go around lying about these things. So when he met this new woman, he told her that he wasn't married, that he was separated. I don't even know if he told her that at the beginning, but that he was separated and that they were getting a divorce. He certainly didn't say that he was still sleeping with his wife. And look, I've got to tell you also, I've seen the footage with her, with the mistress, and something's not right there. I haven't seen enough to make a judgment, but from what I can tell, with the things that she was Googling before knowing about the murder, that's quite concerning, and I think we'll hear more about that at a later stage. But I'm not going to discuss that because, as I said, this is specifically about Chris Watts and narcissism and about sleeping with the enemy, because that is the takeaway message from this. Do you think Shanann would have ever, in her wildest dreams, thought that her husband would murder her? Like, she idolized that man. She absolutely loved him. You see it in the footage of her and her family, and her telling the world that, he's the best thing that ever happened to her, and blah, blah, blah. It's very sad to watch, knowing now, obviously, that, he's taken her life and those little girls' lives. But the thing is, you know, she didn't know what he was capable of. So my message to you is, I'm telling you now, if you are involved with someone that has narcissistic personality disorder, or worse, antisocial personality disorder, they have real potential to be violent if they are not already being violent to you. And the thing is, what you also have to understand is there are also the types like Chris, who obviously valued his wife at one stage. So when she was up on the pedestal, she was up on the pedestal as well. She was love bombed like crazy. And we know that 15 weeks ago, they were still sleeping together. So he was probably doing a great performance of being a good husband, doting father. He probably was getting a lot of supply from that. However, for whatever reason, the discard happened, and he met this new supply, and he was trying her on for size and finding that, oh, maybe this could work. And instead of being a normal person who would actually end a relationship before they start on a new one, you know, the narcissist has this complete and utter sense of self-entitlement where they can just do whatever the fuck they want, whenever they want, with whoever they want. And they don't care about the consequences, and they certainly don't care about hurting people, about destroying families. And quite frankly, if push comes to shove and if you're the only thing in the way of them living happily ever after with the new supply, you are at risk. Okay, and that is as clear as the nose on my face. You are at risk. Okay, so you can spend your time Googling, you know, oh, why doesn't he love me anymore? Or, will the narcissist come back? Or whatever kind of stuff you're Googling. But what you really need to be Googling is how to start a life without them, how to go no contact, and how to be safe. Okay, because women who die at the hands of their partners never see it coming. And when they do see it coming, it's just too late. I speak from authority. My mother lost her life at the hands of my father, so her husband. Okay, so when I'm speaking about this is something that I know. Okay, I know it all too well. And when I was with my narcissist, soon to be ex, well, actually he's a sociopath, but anyhow, or a psychopath, even worse. He's not diagnosed, but on the Robert Hare's checklist for psychopathy, he scored 38 out of 40. So we'll call him a psychopath. I know that at the end of my relationship, I was so kind of psychically connected and in tune with him. I had moments where I could sense him thinking about ways to get rid of me. And when I mean, when I'm saying get rid of me, he was thinking about that kind of stuff. And that to me, was kind of one of those red flags that I just could not ignore. I mean, I still love that man. I loved him the day that I left him, but I knew that he wasn't well. I knew that I was at risk, and I knew that I had to get out. And when I hear stories like this of the Watts, I think, it's just so very, very sad, but it serves to warn the rest of us. We have to pay attention to the fact that these blokes are dangerous. Okay, so they've got this complete set of entitlement. They have no empathy or care and concern for anyone. Their entire reality and world just revolves around them and what they want. And if you're in the way of what they want, then they will get you out of the way, and they'll do whatever it takes. And I think more and more of these cases, as they come to light, we will realise that these people are sociopaths or psychopaths or narcissists. And just another thing, just quickly, also, one of the things that also struck me as, as really similar, is that my ex also used to use an app on his phone, the same kind that Chris Watts had. It's an app that looks like a calculator, but when you put a certain passcode into it, so certain numbers. It actually is a hidden vault on the mobile phone. So Chris Watts was found to have one of those on his phone. And so even when his wife was, pregnant, he was having an affair with this woman, he had all of that stuff secreted away, hidden on his phone. And that, again, is such a narcissistic thing to do. This hiding the evidence and feeling, they just feel so untouchable, thinking, you think you're so smart, but if only you knew what I've got on my phone. He carried that phone around all the time with the photos of his naked woman on them. There's just that mentality. This hiding things, feeling smug, feeling like they're getting away with it. And, he was planning a new life with this woman. So while his wife was trying to save their marriage, he was actually planning a complete and utter new life with this other woman. And, it just goes to show, why not just get divorced? Because they think they can actually get away with murder, because that's the kind of people that they are. They actually think that they are above the law, that they're smarter than everyone else, that they can get away with it. Like I said, if you watch the footage of Chris Watts and this interview, you'll see him laughing because he can't believe he's getting away with it. He's like, oh yes, they're buying everything I'm saying. It's all happening just like I planned, just like I, visioned it out in my head. I think if we could tell, if we could actually see the things that go in their head, go on in their minds, we would be really scared. They're pretty sinister, pretty dark. Jesus Christ, what kind of person can actually put, little girls' bodies into barrels of oil, dump them, lifeless bodies, into barrels of oil? Little girls into dark, oil well, just, it's really, really horrific. So for those of you, like I said, if you love someone, I understand love. I understand, I really do. But if they're a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath, you are at danger. You need to start paying more attention to the warning signs and signals, and do not end up a statistic. As I said, could you imagine the absolute horror that poor woman went through, realizing that he wasn't going to stop, realizing that he was going to kill her and that he was killing her, and the terror she must have gone through, thinking about, oh, my babies, and what's he going to do? It would have just been the most terrifying, traumatizing, excruciatingly painful, scary death. And at the hands of someone who, before God and man, and before the law, promised to honor and obey and protect, and all the things that, he would have swore to God that he would do. So they don't value marriage. They don't value the truth. They don't value human life. They don't care about anything. And their grip on reality is just so loose. As I said, watch the video, watch him you can almost see him going between stages of keeping his act together, then losing it a little bit, getting so high on the idea that he's getting away with it and it's actually happening, and then he's laughing, and then he's pulling himself up, realizing, oh shit, I'm actually laughing, I better stop now. It's an actual performance. But as I said, at points he has gotten lost. I think at one point he even says something about not being able to tell if this is real or not. So it's quite insightful. It's really sinister, and it's been quite horrific to research it, to be honest, but it is quite insightful watching his behavior. And as I said, we'll definitely hear more about the mistress. I'd say she knew exactly what was going on. But anyhow, that will be another video, another day. All right, darlings. As I said, get yourself narc free, stay narc free. You know, don't end up a statistic. All right. Thank you. Bye.